Executive Vice Chairman of the Computer Warehouse Group, Austin Okere, says the rule of law is more about enforcing existing rules than creating new laws, and the enforcement must be within the full ambit of rule of law and respect for fundamental human rights. He joins us via Skype as we explore how Nigeria is keeping up with regulation enforcement. Austin, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've been writing about this topic, and I did see the piece you put in the Business Day newspaper, and I think you raised very interesting points. I want us to start, first of all, by hearing your perspective on the cost of not enforcing the rules in Nigeria. You made a good point about the insurance sector. Historically, we haven't seen the growth that we have seen in the banking sector, and you've pointed out that to a large extent it's simply because we are not enforcing the laws.
Yes, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be on the show. Let's start from the insurance sector. In many climes, the insurance sector is the biggest funnel of money to the productive sector. We haven't had that situation in Nigeria because we didn't make those big calls that the banking sector did. Remember when we had the consolidation in 2005? And we have still tottered on regulation in the insurance sector to the extent that there is flagrant disregard for the compulsory insurance in all categories. If you look at the
all right, this obviously is becoming... Yes, go ahead, sorry. Continue.
If you look at the motor insurance, the Senate Committee Chairman on Bank and Other Financial Institutions stated that there is only 30% compliance. And this is the easiest to comply with, or easiest to enforce. So it's quite alarming that we're not just doing the enforcement of the regulation.
Right. There's always this talk about political will, just the will to get things done. And if the problem has become this serious for the insurance sector, one can only imagine that that has been absent for a long while. From your perspective, what is it going to take to make lasting change that would obviously impact the growth of key sectors like insurance?
Well, insurance is one thing which we need to tackle. I think there is a clear appetite from at least three key regulators to do something about it. The Minister of Finance made pronouncements about enforcement. The Minister of Power and Works also talked about enforcement, especially with key developments in the property sector that needs to have insurance whilst the development is going on. And then you had the NICOM commissioner also make pronouncements about enforcement. So there seems to be an appetite. What needs to happen is also an enlightenment of the populace about the benefits and their responsibility to adhere to regulation. If I take it a little bit away to other key sectors, as you mentioned, let's take, for instance, the ICT sector. We are going to be powering our economy on the ICT sector now with the collapse in oil prices. And we have beautiful regulation that is championed by, or should be championed by, the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion. But those regulations are just totally flaunted. One key one which benefits in furtherance of fair trade was that before now, the technical support that global software companies charge was just 10%. And then the NOTAP said, no, it's too small for support, so increase it to 23%. That was done. But also, the NOTAP then had a regulation that we have to have local companies become more than sales agents for the companies, for the software giants. So there should be support centers, and there should be a 40% split to the local companies to deliver the support. This is not happening. Local companies are cutthroat competition and taking only 10% and 5%, and they are not able to grow. They're just dying.
Right. That NOTAP story is obviously a very interesting one, and we'll continue to follow that, and hopefully we could see some changes there. But you also spoken about the cost of corruption in the country, and we know that the current government has made that one of its key focal points in terms of policy. And your perspective on the cost of not dealing with corruption. Over the years, we have seen a lot of investments sit on the sidelines simply because of that stigma of corruption across Nigeria. Your perspective on the cost of corruption?
For me, the cost of corruption is more than the money that is lost to corruption. The cost of corruption is what is like the dumbing down of intellect, of creativity, of productivity. So it seems that we really don't know what we're doing in making certain decisions that we make. And it's not that the key players do not know what they're doing or what is right. Is that what corruption does is that it makes you make suboptimal decisions, decisions that result in abandoned projects, projects that could be a opening of the door for more productivity in the polity. Let me give you two examples. Take the example of the bridge that connects to Falomo from Victoria Island. Before that little bridge was built, there was always a gridlock at that point. And just by freeing up that opportunity for free movement, the economic impact in Victoria Island is massive. Same with the Lekki-Ikoyi bridge. But now with corruption, someone would have taken the money and not done the bridge or done it halfway, and then you begin to see that we are economically constricted. So the cost of corruption is not just the money that we're trying to get back, it's more in the disruption of the creativity of the people, a loss of the moral compass, and total collapse of the economy because of these bottlenecks.
Right. And in terms of enforcing the rules, obviously there are fines, there are penalties. One fine that has obviously grabbed the headlines in the last few months has been MTN's fine with respect to not registering phone users the right way. And many have suggested that maybe that fine was excessive. In trying to enforce the law, can you just speak to the balance we have to find between the penalty and the crime?
Well, it may be argued that the fine is excessive. It sounds so if you look at the quantum of it, $5.1 billion. But if you break it down to what constitutes it, then it was already the regulation that you are going to be charged $2,000 per SIM card that is not registered. If you multiply by the number of SIM cards that were not registered, then it sums up to exactly that fine. The issue is that when the infringement is compared, the fine for the infringement is compared to the company and its going concern, whether it's going to totally bankrupt the company to the extent that the company ceases to exist, or whether that should be tampered. That is where the subjectivity comes in. And I think that MTN is by all means a very important part of the Nigeria economy, and nothing that will cease it to operate should encourage anything that will cease it to operate. We should encourage it to operate, but we should also send a clear message of deterrence. So I'm happy that the consensus has been reached, and I'm happy that the message is clear. No company is too big to be made to follow regulation. So in my view, this should not be just a knee jerk. Consistency is more important than just showing a signal and not following up. So if we're going into a new era of regulation, then we must consistently apply the regulation to whosoever that needs to be applied to, or who breaks the law should pay the fine. And it must be consistent.
Right. Austin, thank you so much for speaking to us today. Useful perspective there. Austin Okere, Executive Vice Chairman of the Computer Warehouse Group.